What's going on, guys? Welcome to In the Zone. I'm your host, Garrison Roy, and today we're going to have a very special full-length interview. But if you're new to the podcast, we have different segments such as rants, where I go on hot topics and just kind of rant on things that I see on social media or things that are happening. And then also deep dive educational ones and also mental minutes to help with any mental side of the game that you need to help you stay in the zone. And if you have any other questions or topics, you can put that in to our inbox, in the zone podcast 123 at gmail.com. Because we don't do sponsorships or ads. All we ask is that you share the show and and spread the word, really, because we want to help the game of baseball grow. And just the same way as we would do honor system of word of mouth through anything else, we want this podcast to grow in the same way. So we're not trying to sell you anything in particular, just trying to talk baseball and grow the game all together. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring on Aaron Bray. What's going on, Coach?
What's going on, Garrison? How are you?
Doing good, doing good. I think right before we started recording, we were like, "Yeah, it's been since 2013 whenever we crossed paths, and I was playing for
Yeah,
you with the Vipers."
that's
So,
right. It's been a long time.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I want to give the listeners a little bit more background on where you've came from. Obviously, you've been in the Charlotte area for a while too,
Mm,
um, but kind of how you've developed through your playing career and then also as a coach after the fact.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm originally a Pennsylvania-born northern northerner that moved down here at the age of 10. Dad got a job, so he moved down here at 10. So I consider myself to be a Southerner. More importantly, a Charlottean.
Yeah.
Graduate of Independence High School, class of '05. Played 4 years at Charlotte. Loved my 4 years there. Had two NCAA appearances. Was a 4 year starter, freshman All American. What else? Couple school records. Lead the school in career hits. I think it's like 290 some hits in a career.
That's
So
awesome.
after I played my 4 years there, I moved on and played 2 years. I was 27th round pick by the Astros in the that would have been what, June. The draft was in June at that time. So June of 2009, I played in the Fallen Appalachian League, which is now a collegiate summer league. It's not even part of professional baseball anymore. And then in 2010, I was able to have my first spring training, which was awesome. Played in low A at the time, which was in Lexington, Kentucky, the South
Mhm.
Atlantic League, which was awesome. Was able to come back home, Greenville, Greensboro, Asheville, Hickory, Kannapolis at the time, the old stadium in Kannapolis. The new one's gorgeous, but played in the old one. Um, and then after that, I got released that off season and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life and career. And of course, it always goes back to baseball. So I was working in an indoor facility up in Mooresville. I did that for a couple years. And in 2012 was the first year I coached in the Southern Collegiate Baseball League. I was with the Statesville Owls. And then
Mhm.
I ventured down back into Charlotte and was at the Athletic Barn, which is no longer there in Waxhaw anymore.
Wow, that's
But I was
unfortunate.
there
That
for,
was a really cool
yeah,
facility too.
yeah, yep. So the town bought it, but I was there for 10 years. And in 2013, I think, was it 2013? Yeah, it would have been 2013 was my first year we had the Carolina Vipers,
Mhm.
the collegiate team. And then we ran that. I had that every summer up until would have been 2021 was my last year. And then I took a job, and then I again worked at the Athletic Barn, was doing lessons, running our youth department, which was part of Five Star Baseball at the time, based out of Marietta, Georgia,
Mhm.
or Warner Robins, Georgia. So I did that for 10 years in the place that, yeah, 12, 13, 14 years of like youth baseball and then that collegiate league team. And then in what it would have been January, February of 22, like got a job with the Red Sox as a fourth coach down in the complex league team, which was a great experience. But it was like, hey, you got the job, you got to be down here in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
And it was like, so it sped everything up on my family. My wife and I at that time had two boys, younger. They're now 6 and 4. At that time, they would have been like 4 and 2, 5 and 3, something along those lines. And but sped up on us. I was down in Florida for 7 months, spring training, and then our season uh, was definitely a cool experience because it's a little bit different down in the complex league. You have an abundance of players, a little bit bigger staff than what you see at most minor league affiliates, but was down there. I ran pretty much our infielders on a day-to-day basis, and then because of the influx of players, was able to run a cage in our work, in our cage work, our hitting work, and stuff like that. Learned a ton of stuff, and that we always use this term in baseball that it speeds up on you, and then after that year, like everything sped up. It was like end of the season came. I came back home. Boss calls me. He's like, "Hey, we want to keep you in the same role, but we're going to send you to Double A." I'm like, "That's perfect. Going to go to the Eastern League, be up in Portland, Maine, like looking up apartments already, and this and that." And then December rolls around. I get a phone call from my boss. He's like, "Hey, the Padres called. They want to interview you for their high A hitting coach position. Like, what are your thoughts?" And I was like, "Never done this before. I don't know like what this is like. Like, how does this all work? You know?"
Mhm.
And he's like, "Well, you can interview. We'll grant you permission because your job is part time as a fourth coach in the Red Sox organization. So we'll grant, like, if you want an interview, we'll grant you permission. And if you don't get it, like, you still have your job here. It's no big deal." And I was like, "All right." I was like, "It'll be good to go through the interview process." And it was like that was on Tuesday night. Wednesday, got a phone call. It was like, "Hey, we're going to do a Zoom tomorrow, Thursday." And I was like, "All right." So I get on the Zoom. I interview Friday. Like, again, speeds up on you. Friday, I was offered the
Very
job,
fast.
took
Yeah.
the job. Yeah. So I went like being a Red Sox to like in the snap of a finger being a San Diego Padre. And I was in, so I left February. I was out in mini camp last February, obviously. Went out to mini camp, was there for spring training, came home right at the end of spring training for like a week, and then drove up to Fort Wayne, Indiana. Was there from April to September. Made a playoff run, which was cool. Lost in the first round, but got in after a slow start. Had a bunch of good players, and we can talk about some of them too. One of them looks like he potentially might break camp with the big league team and start in center field, and
Love it.
has only played like 2 months of Double A. It was just around a good group of people. The organization is awesome. I love the people I work with and work for. Um, so then this year, going back in a little bit different role, still staying with the hitting department, but going to be like a roving hitting coach. So, spring training is obviously going on right now. I'm sitting here in Charlotte. Next week, I'll fly out and go out to spring training for 2 weeks, and I'll come back home. I was out in January for the end of our January camp. So a little bit more, be home a lot more this season compared to previously, which is nice. I like that. With my wife and I welcomed our third child in June. We have a baby girl, so 2 boys and a girl. So life is speeding up on us on that front.
Absolutely.
So now the boys are at the age now where it's baseball practice twice a week, games on the weekends. So it'll be nice to be home because I've kind of missed that the last 2 years with being gone. So
Oh, for sure. Well, and that I love I didn't really understand it until kinda like how you laid it out, and I had a previous interview with Flint Wallace with the Rockies on kinda
mm,
what a rover coach does, right? Like, they kinda float around and they'll go
yeah,
to,
mm,
affiliate to affiliate to be able to
yeah,
just kind of see what certain guys are doing and kind of more of, okay, hey, like, what are we working on with this guy? What's
yeah.
this going on? Hey, how's this plan working out? And nowadays with all this video tech and true media and stuff,
Mhm.
like you can do a lot
Yeah.
of evaluation from home, which is really cool.
Oh, I mean, it is. There's so much, and with the information that we're getting from games, I mean, it's crazy. It's a lot to process,
Mhm.
but it also, I think, helps and makes things a little bit easier. And the way I look at it, and again, you know, a lot of my phone calls moving in this role, or a lot of my conversations moving in this role, were phone calls. So, I don't know what exactly they're expecting out of me when I show up, but I think in this game, and especially it depends on the people you're working with, right? Like
Sure.
I I love the group that I worked with in Boston, but like I love this group I'm with in San Diego. I was just texting with a couple guys the other day, stay in contact with them throughout the off season, and like had a great staff in Fort Wayne. Like love all of them to death, and but I view it as like a second set of eyes. We're in
Mhm.
this game where it's like especially like, and one thing I noticed, like being around the same group of guys for 7 months, you have guys go up and guys go down, but like it's your eyes and you view it in a certain lens where it's like, okay, I'm seeing this. And like our hitting coordinator would come in at the time and he was like, well, I see this. And I'm like, good. Like that helps too. So it's like, it's not that I'm going to go in there. I'm not a coordinator by any means. I'm a
Mhm.
I'm a roving hitting coach. So it's like, hey, what do you see different? Or hey, I was watching video before I came into town. Like this is what I saw. I'm not sure what you guys have been discussing over the last month or 2 weeks or however long it's been. Um, but it's the second set of eyes because I think the one thing is, communication is big in all aspects of
Oh,
life in
absolutely.
general, right? So to me, we have such a good hitting department and a hitting group that it's not like an ego thing. It's more
Mhm.
of like, hey, like I need help. Like, what do you see with this guy? Like, whatever I'm doing with him is just not. It's not clicking right now. Like, do you see anything different? Do you have a different cue word? Like, and I think like overall from top to bottom last year, like we were really good offensively with the stuff that we value. We value different things than what other organizations value, and but with what we do within the confines of our organization, like we were good at what we value, and that was from top to bottom. I think a lot of it has to do with communication. The phone calls about guys being sent up or sent down, they weren't 10 minutes, they were 40 minutes, an hour, like, hey, you're getting these three guys from me. Like, this is what we've been working on. This is what he's struggling with. And
Mm.
I think that's allowed us to, again, like, in a way, everybody's different. We don't have, like, yes, we have our set philosophy as an organization, what we're going to do, and again, what we value, but it's also like, whatever we have to do to get this guy going, like, let's go. It could be a different cue word, it could be a different drill, like, whatever it may be. But,
Sure.
so we're allowed to work freely, which is nice. But the communication part is huge, and like I said, that second set of eyes is always a huge thing in this game, and I don't think that it's valued as much as at the younger ages,
Mm. Yeah.
in my
I agree with
opinion.
that.
Um, I think a lot of it's like set in their ways, and like I think Twitter's funny at times.
Sure. It can be
You
comical and
know,
what how
it could
people's
be
responses.
because I look at it and I'm like, if to me, again, because you're working with different people and different, especially like right now, I'm doing lessons while I'm home, and you get kids from that are high school. Like over Christmas break, I had college hitters, like SEC hitters that I'm working with, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
you have the 11-year-old come in. Everybody moves different. Everybody's built different. And like the one thing that I've probably learned, having been in baseball coaching for this longest time, I still feel like every year it's like, how many more things can I learn?
Mhm.
Or can I listen to X amount of people talk in a year and then pull something from them? It doesn't have to be the whole thing, but like maybe like what I see some person doing, I'm like, I don't really like what he's doing, but like I like the idea of that. So
Sure.
then you
Yeah.
take it and you spin it into like how you would use it. But I feel like we all at some point in time we have like our goggles on. It's like, no, you got to do A, B, and C, and it's like, well, this 11-year-old can't move like this 19-year-old, or this 16-year-old's
Oh, yeah.
moving better than everybody else. So like, and that's what it's allowed me to do is understand like what's going on under the hood. I'll use an example. One of the kids I hit with, he's a college guy, and like had hip issues where he's sliding his hip and kind of pulling off a little bit. And I was like, we just got to get more back leg stability. And I was like, but you need to, maybe loosen up your hips a little bit more. We're like, come to find out, it's like, if I'm standing straight, I'm thinking my hips are in a straight line facing you right now, but like his were off centered.
Hmm.
I forget which way, but off centered enough that like that's why he had to do it. Like he had to slide to get them back in a straight line to then rotate. So
Yeah.
like having known that, now it's like, okay, now we need to adjust the way that you're striding and just the way that you're standing in the box to like get you back, like get your hips neutral when you land, so then we can get better rotation. So again, it's like that certain thing, and I understand that we all don't have the technology to do that on a day to day basis. Like as much as everybody would probably love to have it, it's expensive.
Sure.
Like I'm looking at running my business and I'm like, I have a rap soda, I have a blast, I have a hack attack, and I'm like, I spent like $10,000. And you start looking at other things that I think are cool in the game, but it's like I can't afford that.
Right.
but I think it's like this constant of like, hey, we have to keep adapting to the game and keep adapting to the people that we're working with. Um, so yeah, I just think that we get very like
Narrow-minded.
blindsided,
Oh,
not
no,
blindsided, but
absolutely.
like narrow
Yeah.
minded for sure. It's to me, it's a never ending adaptation to the game.
Oh, 100%. And you got to get as much information as you can. I love kind of circling back a little bit of what you were saying about like guys being sent up or sent down, that
Mm,
you guys are having conversations like, hey, this is what he's struggling with. That gives you a whole lot more context to kind of go in versus maybe at first you see it as a brand new set of eyes, right? Very
mm-hmm.
unbiased. You're like, oh, hey, this is what I see. And then you're like, oh, dude, this is something completely different than what we were even touching on.
Yeah.
Or, be like, hey, he's flying open. Okay, you were cueing the front shoulder or the front hip.
Mm,
You didn't address the back leg, right? Like
yeah.
very similar
Yeah.
to pitching too, right? Like there's all
Mm,
different things that you can focus on, but which one's going to yield the best set of performance? What's going to
yeah.
get him to that position where he's going to play better, right? Essentially, like that's what
Mm,
we're trying to do, regardless of whatever the philosophy is or whatever background you have, which I love what you said. You got to take it as little nit pieces from everyone.
yeah. Yeah.
Everyone has their own little puzzle piece side of things. They're not
Hmm.
going to have the entire picture figured out.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with too is like, and it's even in pro ball, but I don't want to say it's like crazy, but everybody like we're in a world now where when I was growing up, I'm 36 years old. When I was growing up, there what like nobody did lessons. I
Mm.
worked at a place over in Matthews. It's no longer there, but it was called Grand Slam. So they had instructors there, but like a lot of them were working 9 to 5, and they'd come in and maybe do a lesson at 7:30, and then do a couple of them and go home. Like it wasn't this, hey, like I'm here at 3 o'clock and I'm staying until 10 o'clock tonight. Like we didn't have those opportunities back then. So again, the game has grown, but like my point is that like everybody has their own hitting coach now. Everybody has their own pitching guy,
Sure.
and I think it's good. But I also think that like what's happening in the game now, and again, I didn't deal with this in my 2 years, going on my third year in pro ball, and like don't really deal with it with any of the college kids. But you do get into this with younger kids where it's like, well, hey, you're telling them to do this, but his coach at practice is telling him to do that, and I'm like,
Mm.
hey, give the guy my number. Like let's talk. Like because
Oh,
when it
absolutely.
comes down
Got to
to it, like it
collaborate.
has nothing to do with him and has nothing to do with me. It's like it's all about the player.
Hmm.
We both have our own goals of like, hey, we want to you as the coach, whether it's rec ball, travel ball, middle school baseball, high school baseball, like you want him to play well because you want to win games. And I look at it where maybe I'm more one sided, where I'm not like the team wins great, but like I'm more focused on you because that I only work with you.
Hmm.
um like I want you to produce, so we want the same goal, but it's like, to me it's just you get kids get lost in translation, and they're the different words that are used, and again, you might say the same thing but two different phrases. Like I might say one thing and he might say the other thing. He's like, oh well, he's telling me to do this and you're telling me to do that, but it's like, well, hey, it means the same thing, it's just you're taking it differently each time somebody says it to you. Like I would love to get on phone with people and just talk hitting, whether it turns into an argument or not. But like, to me, I think that if we're doing this for the right reasons, like which is the player, it should be an open conversation,
Hmm. And you
and I've
just have
never had
that
anybody call me.
almost, yeah, it's a constructive criticism or feedback, right? Where like maybe you challenge the other guy and what his philosophy is, or maybe his viewpoint on a certain athlete, or vice versa. Like he challenges you on it, like, oh, you know what? I
Yeah,
actually didn't think about it
absolutely.
that way.
Absolutely. And then, like I said, it goes back to having like the two sets of eyes. It goes back to communication, and it goes back to like, I view it one way and you're saying it this way. Hey, I might like your way. Like, I'm going to steal that way from you because I like it. Like, thank you. Like, again, I think it allows us. I always think that if you're having a conversation with somebody, and to me, it doesn't matter what level you coach at, if I'm talking to somebody, like I'm trying to pluck something from them. If I'm listening to somebody talk, like I'm trying to pluck something from
Hmm.
them. And that's the way I view it. And then maybe I'm different than a lot of other people, but I'm like, no, I don't care what level you're at. Like, hey, you work with younger kids. Like this, like having conversation with you might help me adapt a little bit more to working with some younger kids, like the way that you maybe dumb it down a little bit, or just maybe like the words that you use compared to the words I use. Because like to me, my verbiage has changed being in professional baseball now. So
Hmm.
like working with some younger kids, like when I start talking about like, hey, you got to keep stability in their back leg, and they're staring at me, and I'm like, stay back, and they're like, oh, okay, like yeah, and I'm like, I'm just using a buzzword or whatever you want to call it, but that's just like that's what my mind is accustomed to. So again, like having conversation with guys that coach at different levels and verbiage they use compared to verbiage I use, like again, everything's an open conversation. It's not I'm right, you're wrong. It's like, hey, how do we help this guy get to where we want him to go? You know, um,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's
but it's I feel like
coaches.
it's hard to do that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I've had moments where I may have had a little bit of ego in a conversation with coaches, and they're like, "Oh no, like this is it, or this is what's going on," and you gotta have to check yourself a few times. Where you're like, "Okay, hey, I need to zoom out. I need to see the bigger picture here, right? Like this is
Yeah.
for the athlete. It's not. I shouldn't take it personally, right?
Mhm.
Like it's not
Well,
a
and that's the
personal
thing.
attack
It's
on
like
me."
but I think that the bite back comes from just like you really believe in what you're doing, you know,
Mhm.
like which isn't a bad thing, because if you
Sure.
don't firmly believe in what you're doing, then is it really working?
Yeah.
In my opinion. So to me, it's just like I would love to, and I've thought about doing it, but like I never find the time or never really seem to get people to like bite into it. I've had certain conversations with some people in the area, but I'm like, I just want to go to a facility and like invite any baseball people around and like let's just sit around, bring your coffee. We don't need any fungos, we don't need any machines. Like let's just sit down and talk. And like
Yeah.
what can happen? Like what could be the worst thing that happens? Like we sit down, we talk. Like again, like I can learn things, you can learn things, and you may disagree and I may disagree, but we're able to like have this conversation and like walk out of there going like, hey, that was the best like 3 hours I spent when it comes to it. Like that would be my ultimate goal in the city of Charlotte, is like to go to a big building and just, hey, let's sit down and talk. Like whether it's pitching, which I will not even, I'll just listen when it comes to the pitching aspect of it. But like I I think that would be awesome for the city of Charlotte, because I think that, and I was a part of it. Like I was in travel baseball running 5 star, and I understand that you got all these different facilities now that are around Charlotte. And there was like 2 when I grew up, and now there's like 20. It seems like, and there's a lot of good baseball players in this area. And I always said this. I was like, you see the bigger tournaments like WWBA and stuff like that. And I was like, could you imagine if we took like a group of 5 stars kids and a group from SBA and a group from some of the dirtbag kids that live in North Carolina? I might get killed for saying this, but like if you took that group, like would they go, like they could go and win that tournament? Because the baseball here in Charlotte, like if you took a team of just players from Charlotte, like you can go win that thing easily,
No doubt.
I think.
No doubt. I agree with
And
that.
but again, it's spread out a little bit, and I understand it. I get that aspect of it too. But I'm like, what can we do? I'm not asking to have this group session to merge teams together. That's not what I want to do. I don't want to be involved in that. But I think that like we can grow Charlotte baseball even more than what it is, because it's huge
Yeah.
right now. It's
I think,
huge.
yeah, that's a great idea, honestly, just from the developmental standpoint, right? It's not about like
Hmm.
hey, what team you're playing for. It's more of,
Hmm.
hey, are we growing this game in, in the city of Charlotte or wherever you guys that are listening to this, like wherever it is, are you helping promote people to play, or are you
Hmm.
missing, like not encouraging that and getting them to, not play because they didn't make the national team or, whatever, right? Like that's something that, and every organization I think needs to
Yeah.
look at in every level. It's like,
Hmm.
hey, are you making this enjoyable for the guys, right? Like again,
Yeah.
especially pro ball, it is a business, but you want it to
Hmm.
still be fun and you still want it to be where they're looking forward to coming in the field versus it,
Yeah.
especially at a younger age. You don't want it to be a thing where they want to use it as a
Absolutely.
job.
Absolutely. No, I mean that's the thing. It is a job in pro ball. Like, and I was talking to a college coach last night. He was a good friend of mine, and I was just saying about how he's talking about a player they have, and he's new to the school, transfer, and he's met with some pro teams, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, that's good. I actually know the kid personally, coached him before, and he's like, he might have a chance to get drafted. And I said to him, I was like, you know what? I was like, I think it'd be more beneficial for him to like stay an extra year.
Mhm.
Playing in your conference is definitely a very similar to professional baseball with like what you're seeing from an arm standpoint as a hitter. Um, and I was like, because now the league is getting younger, whether people see it or not. Like a lot of younger guys are coming up. Like we had a top international guy in the 23 draft, Ethan Salas, like, or not even draft, but international signing period, signed for a ton of money. He's a top 10 prospect in all of minor league baseball. Like the dude's got ability and talent like through the wazoo. And he just turned 17 this season. I had him for 2 weeks. He got up to double A, and like he's coming. Like he is coming. He is on his way. And the guy I mentioned earlier, shortstop that we had, like might crack the roster this year, which is awesome, but might be in center field, not even shortstops. Like I guess the other importance is like learning how to play multiple positions at a young age. Like I think that's huge too. But the league's getting younger and the draft's getting smaller. They've gotten rid of there's no more rookie ball. Like your only rookie ball is the ACL and the FCL. Like there's
Mhm.
no short season anymore. So to me, it's like, yeah, that year of playing makes you staying an extra year in college, or being a high school kid and being like maybe a mid-level draft pick. Like I think a lot of these picks, there's not as many like flyers in my opinion, where you're not drafting a guy in the 30th round and like, hey, like we'll see what he does. Like we're gonna give him little
Mhm.
money in the 30th, 40th round and see what he does. Like they're legitimately drafting guys that like, hey, like we think this guy can play in the big leagues. And it's getting to the point now where it's fast tracking. Like you're fast tracking guys to the big leagues. Probably faster than what I was going on, or when I was playing, like what was going on. Like you had to go through the ringer of like, hey, he needs to make a stop here, he needs to make a stop there. And no, if you can play and you can help a big league club team win, like you're going to get there. So I think like this, there's not a lot of room for error. There was never room for error, but I think it's even more now. Like there's no room for error now. And like most of the lineup I had was in big league camp. Some of them got sent down, but like they're right on the cusp. And you're talking about only being they're going into like their second full season of professional baseball,
Mhm.
and so I'm like, it's getting younger, but it's also like if you're ready when you get there, like you're going to give yourself a chance. If you're not ready, we're all going to go through this up and down part of
That's
hitting
baseball.
or
Yeah.
playing defense or pitching. Like it's definitely baseball, but it's like, to me, I think it would be tough to look back and be like, man, like one more year of college would have helped me been a little bit more physical. Like, I could have, if I'm going back to get like my master's and taking a couple of classes, like I have a little bit more time throughout the day to like go work on things and be prepared to get like when you're there. I think that's the biggest thing, is like being prepared when you're there, because I think as fast as they're moving guys up the ladder, they're sending guys home just as fast, in my opinion.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah. There's a
hey,
give and take with that for sure.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you'll see guys that might be struggling at a certain level, and you see them get called up to the next level, and it's like sometimes it's not a good call up, because it's like, hey, we're going to put you here based on your age. Like, let's see what happens in the month that you're here, and like you don't produce, like, hey, we gave him a chance, like time to go home.
Yeah,
And
that's
it
tough.
sucks, but reality is also real. I tell people that all the time, like as much as we want the best for everybody, and as a coach, um, we want for the players, and like we tend to have this relationship, even just doing lessons, like you tend to form a bond with this kid, so you want what's best. But I'm also very transparent in the idea of that, like reality is reality too. Like we can't change that. Um, so I just think that like maturity level of it, and like what you talking about it, or what we were talking about previously, is like, can we help this player, doesn't matter what age, but can we help him get to the next level? And I think that's like the biggest thing, is having people on similar pages in it. And it doesn't mean we go sit in a conference room and I bring up what I think about hitting, and I'm expecting you as another hitting guy in the room to be like, oh, I'm going to totally flip everything. No, that's not what it is. But like, do we have a full arsenal? Like, can we have conversations, prepare ourselves to be like, I'm working with a kid and like, this is my philosophy and it's just he's struggling. Like, well, you can't just keep beating a dead horse. Like
Mhm.
you have to do something different. And it's again, mine's still very traditional. When we talk, if I were to sit and go through like my whole philosophy is still very traditional. There's a lot of, there's new school ideas, but with a lot of old school thought processes and whatever that means nowadays. Cause
Yeah.
it's
Well,
always,
I
I
think
feel
I
like
think
it's
the
old
truth
school
is in the
versus new
middle with
school.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. And,
the guys who
um,
were around the game for a really long time, whether it was old school, I guess, quote unquote,
mhm,
right? Like
yeah.
they were around it and they could conceptualize things that now we just have data points for.
Exactly,
You know?
exactly, and that's
So
the one thing that I've kind of viewed now being in this game is understanding that we have the data to prove, what we're talking about, and like to show that hey, like you see, we were using this cue and trying to get you to do this with your leg or this with your whatever, and it's like you may not feel it, but hey, I have something that backs up and says like, hey, you don't feel it, but like there's a change,
mhm.
right? Like we got you to stay stable in your back leg, which means like you're keeping your center of mass in the center, and like your hips are underneath you, and you're rotating faster. Like you may not feel it, but like look at what your blast says. Like it's going up, you know. So and that's the thing. Like as much as this, it's crazy how it kind of became this whole old school versus new school, especially from a hitting. And I know it's a little bit in the pitching too, but like definitely in the hitting the side of things. And I'm like, you know what though? It's not like, yes, there are people who have like these thoughts that are way out here, and then these thoughts that are way over here. Like this big broad spectrum. But like we're really getting down to the nitty gritty. Like a lot of it's still the same, in my opinion, at least from my philosophy standpoint. Like I was brought up in a quote unquote old school
Mhm.
playing time, and there's some differences in what I teach now than what I would have taught 5 years ago, but it's not that much different. It really isn't. Like
Yeah, you
we're
still
at the
have
end of the day, it's
the
like, can we get the barrel out front to the ball and do damage? Like that's what we're trying to do.
that's it.
I think that there's been certain adjustments that had to have been made just because I think the pitching is like way the heck up here right now.
Mhm.
Um, like one of the things that I say and is to guys, I was like, I've seen stuff like I've seen guys throw bullpens where it's like, hey, like throw your slider, and it's like, throwing it, okay, that looks good. Okay, change the grip a little bit, and then it goes from like just your basic old slider, like this sweeper. It's like in the snap of a finger, changing the grip, like he's created a different pitch. And hitting's not like that. It's
Oh
not
yeah.
like, hey, let's adjust the bat in your fingers and see if we get more whip. Like, yeah, maybe, but you're not going to create like this whole thing. And then I even talk about, I think you get to a certain point too where like your bat speed, you know.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not sure if you can maximize like if I were to take a 17-year-old hitter and a 17-year-old pitcher, and like, okay, you as the pitcher, like you need to go through a bio throwing program, whatever it may be.
Right. Yeah.
All right, we're going to test what your velocity is, and you're going to go through this program for a month. Okay, like you as a 17-year-old hitter, we're going to read your bat speed. Okay, you're going to go through this program. Like you might see the 17-year-old jump 4 to 5, 6 miles. Maybe that's outrageous in a month, but
Sure.
like
No, that's
for
feasible.
an easy term, but like the hitter, like you might only see his bat speed go up like a mile an hour, like one. Like you're not seeing this outrageous jump. And like I said, you get to a certain age, I think, where like your bat speed, your bat speed. And I'm not talking about an 11-year-old, and then at the time he's
Oh
17, like,
yeah.
oh, his bat speed. Well, naturally he grew, he got bigger, like he grew up. So I just think that like we've had to, from a hitting side, like we've had to combat what pitchers are doing now, which is like
Sure.
it's outrageous. It's
Chasing exit
outrageous. Like with some,
velocity and stuff like that,
well, I
right?
mean, we're not. I mean, to be honest with you, like it's not even like, yeah, we want to hit balls hard, like,
Of course. Yeah.
but
It's
we're
part
more
of it.
so like, can we take guys that are 94 plus and like, what's our barrel accuracy? Can we get 94 off the barrel,
Mm.
or are we clipping 94? Is it a timing adjustment? And um, which is like funny. I'm going to bring this story up because talk about timing. Like it's crazy to me that I had this conversation back in January, and to combat guys throwing harder and spinning more efficiently, and spinning at crazy rates. It's like we have to combat and be smaller and a little bit shorter with our moves. And our timing has to be really good. And like again, I still think there's this like theory out there on timing, and everybody's kind of got their own thing. But like for the most part, the general ideology is like, hey, when you see ball break out and the arm going back, like you want to start your move backwards, and you want to think that like we're getting into the ground at ball release. And I was talking to one of our sports science guys when I was out in Phoenix, and I was like, hey, what like why do guys struggle with timing if they're starting early or on time? And I never thought of it this way, which is like crazy. And I don't know why. But again, this comes down to like conversation part of it
Mhm.
is he was like, well, I think it's like the way guys move. He's like, just because you start on time doesn't mean you're going to be on time. Like, what if you load at ball separation from glove, but then you still tend to be late. Well, like you might be getting down a tick soon, and then you can't hold the ground and rotate. Like you have to feel movement, so you shift forward, and the more you go forward, the ball gets on you faster, and now your barrel's late. So
Hmm.
again, like it was crazy, like to me to just hear that. It was good to hear it, obviously, but like so I think like now when I'm starting to do my lessons, like I'm doing a little bit more like movement prep stuff before we start, because it's like, hey, we got to get in the ground and rotate in order to combat like what guys are doing with carry heaters and sinkers and cutters, and then okay, off my cutter I'm going to throw a regular slider, and then off that slider I'm going to throw a sweeper. Like I'm going to have three different versions of it.
Hmm.
Being in a position to be on time and rotate with intent, to keep good direction with the barrel, obviously. But it's like the game is changing so much that it's like, yeah, I love hitting off the machine and like going to get like, hey, let's hit the foam balls and like let's gas it up and like challenge you a little bit. But again, everybody wants to go to like swing mechanics, but like I mentioned earlier, it's like what's going on underneath the hood. Like is what we're doing allowing you to move correctly? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Because if they can't physically get in that position, there's no chance they're going to be able to do it whenever
Yeah,
94-mile-an-hour
exactly.
fastball's coming at you or
Exactly. So,
hard.
and I'm kind of all over the place with everything. Like the 108 Performance guys out in Tennessee with their water bag stuff. Like I've bought into that a little bit. I think it's good. I
There's a
like
time
using
and
the
place
farm
for it, I think,
board.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's not, we're not going in and like overloading, but I think it definitely helps with like an idea of what we're trying to do,
Mhm.
or what I'm trying to do when I get in these lessons. It's not like we're taking a 30-minute lesson and we're doing water bag stuff for 20 minutes. Like, no, we're just going to create a couple fills, get you moving. Um, and I think from a rotation standpoint, it helps also, and that's what we're trying to do now. Is like, hey, I would rather see a guy lose a tick of bat speed to gain more rotation. Because if I'm rotating more efficiently, now I'm not really fighting velocity. I mean, we're always fighting velocity, right? But like the difference of like my head being 2 inches in front when I go to rotate as opposed to staying in the middle of my body, like that's 2 more inches I get to see a baseball that's being thrown hard. And kids are throwing hard at
So much
like
earlier. Yeah.
are so much earlier now, so much earlier. And I think some of it too is like it's weird because you would think like, okay, like if a kid at 14 can throw hard, like there's got to be some 14-year-olds that have the physicality to move the barrel fast to hit it. But there's a lot of 14-year-olds who don't have the physicality. And I think
Mhm.
a lot of it is like, 13, 14, you make that jump to the bigger field. We start moving differently because it's like I got to hit the ball the outfield. So like the more forward movement I have, I think I'm going to put more in my swing, where it's like, no, we need you to think about like just staying in one place and being able to rotate efficiently. And like now you'll start hitting the balls out there. So again, it's just like there's a lot of different things going on in hitting. I think there's a lot of good. There's some that's off the wall,
Sure.
crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think
But I
that's
think
part of,
again,
where you're from too, or where you came from as a coach. You've had all this stuff pre all these other lessons or gurus and stuff that's
mm,
came up, right? And you can kind of pick out some of the eyewash, but also,
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
talking about 108, like maybe there is something to it where you try it. And it's like, hey, like I'm not going to base my entire philosophy around water bags because like maybe you're going to the Dominican and you don't have any water bags. Now what?
Mm, mm,
Right?
yeah,
Like a bunch of different things that you could go about it and still get the same adaptation, but not have the tools that might be,
Yeah,
sold
yeah.
on social media or something
Which
like
I think that's the one thing that I will say is like, and it sucks because there's, the roster limits keep shrinking because there's no rookie ball teams. But I think the one thing that's been good is like now it's not just your Dominican complex anymore. Like what we're doing over here is like what they're doing over there. So there's like a lot more put in, like a lot more emphasis on what's going on over there too. So I always felt like more so as a player, not so much as a coach because I've only been in professional baseball for going on year 3 now. But it's like I always felt like there was like a little bit of a disconnect when I was a player of guys that were coming over to spring training, like players I was around that just looked like lost of like what's going on. But now I think there's a big emphasis on like, hey, no, we want these guys doing what these guys are doing over here because when they roll in, like we don't want to be a full on like reteaching or accustomed to like what we're doing here. It's like no, they come over and they're ready to go, and
that.
I think it's been great for the game, especially over there because there's a lot of good players coming from the academies, and I think it helps with like easier transition too, um, and
100%.
but I think that like it goes back to just being that open minded person, and again I would probably say like if I was over the years, if I've never grew my knowledge or listened to people talk or thought about certain things, and I were to go and interview with like a basic philosophy that I was doing 10 years ago, like I probably wouldn't have a job, right? It's like,
Yeah.
and it's not the whole adapt or die idea. It's just like, are you able to work within the confines of like what we're trying to do here? But like, there's also some things that are outside of those confines that like might help one guy,
Mhm.
and it's not like off the wall, asking you to do certain things that we're not doing, or even certain things that you can't probably do from a movement pattern standpoint
Right.
either. It's
Sure.
just um, being able to like, I think you have to adapt. I think if you want to be really good at whether it's lessons or coaching in general, you have to be able to adapt with the guy that you're working with.
Absolutely. Yeah. 'Cause
Um,
everybody
I feel like
takes in
if a
information
lot of
differently.
people look the same from a hitting standpoint, like that's not a good thing.
Mm.
Now, are there certain constants? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like you go,
Certain
if we were
principles.
to go and look at 4 different hitters right now in the big leagues and stop them all at foot strike, like I bet they're in similar positions. But like people have to move differently to get in those positions. One guy might have to like leg kick, one might have to toe tap. The other one, hey, I just got to put my foot up and put it down because if I'm toe tapping, I feel too sway. If I'm leg kicking, I might feel like I'm getting too high and then I'm crashing into my front side. But like, so everybody, I think, starts differently. But like when you go and look at it, like there's a lot of people who are in similar positions, and I'm sure you could probably touch on the pitching standpoint of it, where it's like,
Oh,
hey,
100%.
guys might takeaways might be different or leg lifts might be different or like what they have to do, but like at foot strike, like some of them are in similar positions.
Mhm.
Like
It's
I said,
all
there's
there's
definitely
different
constants in it.
styles, but there's
Hmm.
also those principles of what you would have. Oh, absolutely. What are your and I'm not sure if I'm giving away too much here or asking maybe a question that can't be answered, but, have you guys dove into anything as far as just eyesight? And I'll kinda back this up with a story of a guy who I had coached last year, where, you heard those guys where they're just cage bomb hitters, right? Or like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
6
yeah.
o'clock hitters who are doing really well. Whenever he was in a really narrow or confined space, he could absolutely blister a baseball. But as soon
Hmm.
as he got out on the field or where his eyesight or the perception of the things around him opened up,
Yeah.
he just couldn't pick up the baseball, right? And
Um,
that might be something for more of a younger guy, his aspect
yeah,
because
I mean,
his body
I
would give
think
it
that
out.
we have. I'm sure that we have someone or some doctor in our organization
Yeah.
that will obviously like take looks at that. Um, like I'm getting the emails now with like the list of like, hey, you guys got to go get your eye exams, this, that, and the other, like what they're doing
Mhm.
out there now. Um, but I'm not sure if there's like I think I'm answering your question.
Oh, yeah.
Is there like a routine that we have that includes eye stuff? No. from a hitting standpoint, but do we have the resources to like figure that out? Probably.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
that's probably a little bit above my pay grade. I think that's
Oh,
one
for sure.
thing that
There's
I think
specialists
that a
in
lot
that
of
too.
people, yeah, I think there's a lot, like, I think that we as an organization do a great job of communicating. Like earlier, we are talking about like the way people move and how it can affect timing or how it can affect the way you get into your launch position. And, like I could go to our strength coach and be like, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Like
Mhm.
when he moves in the box, and he's like, all right, got it. And like, hey, like before you go into your full workout for the day, like you're going to do these 3 to 4 exercises, we're going to start to feel or maybe more strength in a certain part of the body. So there's always constant conversation. I guess to answer your question, like, yeah, there probably is that route if we need to go there, but we don't have as far as like, hey, before you get in the cage, we're gonna like, cover this eye and do some eye
Oh,
work and
yeah,
cover
no.
that
For sure.
eye. No, we don't do anything like that. But like I said, I'm sure there's the resources to me, like in professional baseball, are endless.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, I was just curious, figured I'd ask that because 'cause I've never
yeah,
really dove down that. I had a, optometrist on the podcast on a previous episode of, Lauren Bailey, really good one to listen to for the listeners and for yourself if you wanna dive into it.
yeah,
Has, like, few routines just to kinda help out with more just spatial awareness too, and right, like,
yeah.
that can also influence how a guy moves, which is pretty
Yeah,
wild,
yeah, yeah. No, I,
like
I would I would agree with that 100%. Like the way that you're visualizing things is like probably going to affect the way that you move, or the way that you move is going to affect the way that you see things. No, I mean that's crazy because I've said that before um, to a hitter, like more like recently, but it's like watching him swing, and I'm like, yo, dude, like why don't you just go get your eyes checked?
yeah,
you know
seriously.
and and the only reason why I said that, like, it was kind of jokingly, but it was also like one of those things is I think we're in this world now where like it's so mechanical driven.
Mhm.
And to me, like, that's not a good way to again, mechanics are important, I get that, but like when it comes down to it, when I'm getting in the box, like the last thing I want to think about are my mechanics. Like I have my plan. I have like I'm cued in on the pitcher, and like I got to figure out when I'm going to start, when he's starting. So like if we get into the box and our first idea is like mechanics, but my point is like I think we're in a world now where like there's lessons being done at an alarming rate, which is good. Like I think that's great that people like, hey, I need to go see this guy. Like he really helps me, and
Mhm.
or whatever the case may be. But it's also like we get into these mechanics when you go into lessons, they're so mechanical driven, which is like I think the purpose of them. Like I tend to use a little bit more of like ideology and thought process when we're hitting, because a lot of times our plan will fix our mechanics. But if you get to a point where it's like, hey, dude, like I'm looking at your swing on the tee, like it looks good. I'm looking at the video, like that looks good, but like you're just swinging and missing. Like you're worried about like my swing doesn't feel right. Well, like go get your eyes checked.
Mhm.
Like, have you ever thought about that? You know,
Yeah, no,
um,
it's very true,
I
or,
definitely think it's important
yeah,
because I
you
don't think
zoom
it's
out a
something
little
people
bit.
think about.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Or you have a guy, I mean, you can probably even see it on a guy's body language too, where he's, like, dragging through. He's like, "Alright,
Mm,
you're probably not gonna hit very well that day if you're just,
yeah,
super under recovered. You just got on a bus and drove, in like the Texas League or something like that, where you're just going
yeah,
all the 8-hour
yeah,
drive and you're just like, all right,
hmm,
yeah, we gotta do whatever gets you ready to even just perform today, right? Help you
yep,
stay in the zone there.
hmm,
Last question for you, Aaron, and I really appreciate you coming on and doing this. Um,
yeah.
for you, obviously, you said you've had a lot of accolades through hitting, especially at the collegiate level. Do you ever have a time that you can just instantaneously recall where you were just really locked in at the plate, like everything like a beach ball? Like what describe that, like almost like being so locked in or being in the zone and what that was like for you?
As a player, gosh, I got to
No, it's
really
been a
open
while.
up the.
Like,
I got to really
whenever
open
I
up the yearbook.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I would probably say like based off my career in college, I was really good. Pro ball, I struggled tremendously. Now I had weeks, or not even weeks, but probably more like days where I was like felt really, really good and everything looked like a beach ball. And I think the one thing is like I don't know if I could, and pro ball I tend to like I've lost. I'm like, how, like, why did I do this 2 days ago and now I can't do it now? And like
Mhm.
why was I seeing the ball well? And now I feel like it's an aspirin tablet coming at me, you know. But I would probably base that more off like mentality. Like the one thing that I will say about my career is when I was in college, I never hit below 340 in college,
which is awesome.
and which I mean is good. Now, if you,
Yeah.
I played in the Atlantic 10. If you want to pick on the conference, whatever the conference was, the conference I didn't pick it. I picked the school, but I also had good games against ACC schools, playing them throughout the midweek. So it wasn't like I just tore up bad pitching, but I felt like my mindset at that point in time was more of like, I'm better than you on the mound. I'm gonna be better than you today. And even if you got me out in your first at bat, like, and it wasn't the like, oh, this guy sucks. Like
Hmm.
after I got out, like that's the worst thing that I hate hearing. Like, oh, the pitcher wasn't even good. I'm like, well, he just got you out. So what does that make you? You know? Um, but I think my mindset was like I was more in control, which we all know that the only guy in control when it comes to this is the pitcher. Like he knows what's coming, right? Like I always say this. I'm like, there's three guys that know what pitch is coming: the coach who calls it, if he's calling it, the catcher, and the pitcher. And like maybe your middle infielders know it too, but I'm saying like as far as like the control aspect. But I was like, even with me not having that type of like that control, I still thought I was in control of the at bat, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm going to give myself time to see the ball. I'm not going to chase what you want me to. And when you throw something when you make a mistake, like I'm not going to miss it. And I felt like when I got the pro ball, and again, my mentality switched a little bit. It was like I'm a 27th round senior sign, like didn't get much money. Like I have to perform to stay here. And that's when it was like swing decision got a little worse. And then like maybe too tentative on pitches that, like, hey, in college, like I could hit a fastball off the plate away and hit in the left field, where like in pro ball it was like take, take. And like, now you're getting yourself into holes where you can be less aggressive, and it's like you're very tentative. And
Yeah.
um
That
so
just changes
I
your whole
mean
perception on how you're going to
yeah,
attack the pitch.
I mean I wouldn't say that it was like visually or moving wise. It was more of like my mentality. And I would say like in college I had that mentality of like, you're not going to beat me today, where in pro ball it was like, holy crap, I got to get a hit, you know.
Sure.
Which completely changes the way that you go about it at bat. And like I remember I had my first season in pro ball in '09. Like I had a stretch where I really struggled. um and then I think the month of August I hit 400, and I sat for a good chunk of time. I was more of a utility guy. Like I understood my role. So like, hey, if he's swinging the bat well, like he's going to DH, play first, go to left field, play third, maybe play second. Like he's going to do whatever he can do. If he's hot, and if he's not hot, like he's going to go eat a bag of seeds on the bench today. Like, and I
Yeah.
understood that being a 4 year guy. Like, trust me, I understood the whole like, hey, Jose Altuve was at second base. Like, probably not going to play second base. He was my teammates for 2 years. JD Martinez was another one. Like he was one of our outfielders. Like, hey, probably not going to go take his spot. And they were both good at that point in time. It wasn't like, yes, they obviously kept accelerating their career, and then now they had tremendous. Well, JD's not with anybody, but he's had a tremendous career in the big leagues. Altuve's still going, just signed another extension. Our shortstop was a first round pick out of high school. Our third baseman was like a comp pick that year that I was drafted. So like I understood the idea of like, hey, like if this guy pans out being a 27th rounder, like that's good for us.
Sure.
But I sat for a little bit, got a Sunday day start, and I was like, screw it. Like I'm just gonna get in there and be aggressive. And I think I had 3 hits. And I don't know if you could if you tally up those hits together distance wise, I don't think they all went 200 feet, but they were like seeing eye seal, and it got me going. And like
Yeah.
now those like I was more aggressive, and it was like double, triple, double, single, like 2 for 3, 3 for 4, a couple walks. And like August, I tore it up, and like that's how I ended my first year of pro ball. And then the second year of full season, 140 some games, like it was just a big roller coaster of like sit for a couple days, like all right, like I got to get hits to play, like didn't
Mhm.
get any hits. All right, sit for a couple days, like okay, flip your brain, like be aggressive, like you're in control here, and like get a couple hits, play your 3, 4 days in a row. And then it was like that fifth day, like it shrink back to, and my brain worked a little bit differently. It was like, I was platoon with a guy at first base. I was a leadoff hitter in college. Um, I hit 6 home runs in my college career, like wasn't a thumper. And then it's like, hey, like batting average is starting to raise, like my power numbers need to get up. Now I don't know if I like changed my swing mechanically, like got long at times, which I probably did. But got long at times to try to like, okay, hey, like you had your 4 days of like 6, 7, 8 hits. Like now let's get a couple to leave. And I'm like, dude, you have 0 professional home runs. Like just be who you are. Cause that it goes back to like old school, new school, like whatever. If you hit, you can play. Now, you have to be able to play defense too. Like
Oh, for
I
sure.
don't think there's as much emphasis at the younger ages on defense than there is in like professional baseball. It's like, hey man, this guy can really hit. Like his bat the ball skill is really good. Like he does a lot of damage, but like his first step's too slow defensively, and his arm strength's not good enough. Like I think being a hitting guy, like, hey, we got to score runs to win, but you have to pitch. You have to be able to play to defend to win.
Sure.
Probably more so.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, and I
you
think the
know,
defense ability as you go through the levels of pro ball or even college, right? It improves drastically as you move up.
yeah,
So,
yes, it does. Yes, it does. So it's like, but you have like you can hit, you can play, and that's like the one thing. Like if you hit, like yeah, you may not make it to the big leagues in 3 years because maybe your defense is struggling a little bit, but like a guy that can hit is going to be able to play a lot longer than a guy who like rides the roller coaster wave and it's like shows signs and then doesn't do it for a week. And that's the one thing I will say is like difference in playing what that would have been 14 years ago compared to now is like these guys can play.
yeah.
Like I will say that I had teammates, and as much as I struggled in pro ball, like these guys struggled worse than me, and I'm like, the heck did this guy even get drafted? Like, and then people may have said that about me, and that's fine. Like, it's just, but now, like, you're not missing. Like I said, there's not as many flyers anymore, and it's like, dude, these guys can freaking play, um, and their intent to work, and that's the one thing I do like about it is I don't feel like I was ever like cheated out of work as a professional baseball player, but I think that the way that the game has kind of changed has allowed us to work more efficiently and to get more stuff done. Like there's just more avenues out there for the game. Like I never would have thought at a younger age, whether it be college, high school, like using and hack attacks weren't really around. We had like the
Right.
jugs machines, but like a lot of the defensive work I did when I was doing defense, like, hey, set up the hack attack and like let's go through glove work and footwork and like we can get more reps instead of hey, like do I think going out to the field and catching ground balls is good? Yes, like you have to go out there and catch and throw. But to me, when I'm looking at like perfect practice, right? If I'm going out to a field and let's just say I'm doing an hour fielding lesson and we play catch for 15, like you stretch, we play catch 15, 20 minutes. We have 40 minutes of ground balls. How well are you going to be in that 40 minutes of ground balls? Like, first 15, you might be good, like high energy flying around the field. And then next thing you know, it's like, hey, I'm gassed. Like, I took
Mhm.
300 ground balls. Well, like, hey, we can get on a pad on your knee and we can do glove work. And in 15 minutes, like, you have now caught 100 baseballs and you're not
Right.
exerting yourself energy wise. So it's like more of like a perfect practice. And like, hey, now that we're done doing glove work, we're going to do some footwork stuff again, where you're not overexerting yourself. And it's like, all right, now like we did all this work in 30 minutes. Let's go take the last 10 minutes of the 40 minutes that we had left. And now let's go on the field and like take ground balls. And you're getting 10 minutes of like taking what you did from a glove work standpoint, what you did from a footwork standpoint where you're not overexerting yourself energy wise, and now like let's put it together for 10 minutes and give me 10 minutes of like high intent reps on the field. And so I think like the avenue and the way that the game's changed is definitely beneficial to these guys, and to any player, in all honesty. Like you go in
Absolutely.
these facilities now, everybody's has hack attacks, like everybody. And I know that the whole like I don't know, like hitting off the machine or blah blah blah, but like to me at some point I think that kids need to understand that, like, yeah, we as instructors or as coaches, like, we want you to feel good, but you also need to understand what it's like to be challenged.
Correct.
And
100%. You
and
can't have that easy practice all the time because then you're not.
no, I mean, because to me it comes into like, well, he hits really good off you in the cage and you throw him BP, just can't do it in the game. Well, ma'am, I'm not throwing 90, you know,
Yeah.
sir. Like my fastball probably has a little less of an arc than what he's seeing at 11U, and it's just like, so like, we can turn the machine down, we can turn it up, we can angle it, we can spin it, and like you can do all that in a snap of a finger. Where it's like, there's times where I'm going to throw breaking balls to guys in lessons when I'm doing arm, and it like takes me 10 pitches to get feel for a breaking ball. I don't throw breaking balls every day, so it's like I threw 10 pitches. Maybe that takes 2 minutes, but like that's 2 minutes we wasted. Now I do think that seeing an arm is important too, but it's like every once in a while there's got to be that challenging aspect of it.
Mhm.
Like, hey, you might have hit really well for the 20 minutes of this lesson, but now we're going to put the machine on and you might not hit well, which is okay. It doesn't mean you're swinging wrong. It just means that, like, the challenging aspect, you've never been challenged before. You don't like the challenging. Like, you need to learn to love it.
Yeah. Oh,
Like
well,
I'll
and
say
even in
that.
your
Like we,
aspect too, whenever you were playing sitting all the time, like you couldn't face live. Maybe if you had those hack attacks available where your timing was good and you were
yeah.
ready to rock and roll as soon as
Mhm.
you were given the opportunity to go in, maybe that would have helped. You never know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we had machines. We had the black box Darth Vader. You could program
Oh
the
yeah, I
pitch in that
remember
you wanted,
those.
which was that was fun to do. But I think that the way that the facilities were back 14 years ago, like I played in Lexington, Kentucky. Great town,
Legends. Yeah.
great city. Yep, and the field was nice, but we had one batting cage.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, I want to hit machine today. Well, I need to hit arm. And it's like, well, now what do you do? Because now there's 12 people sitting out here ready to hit. Like, it's like you got to go and get your work. Now you go to most places and they have multiple cages, and you can go in and get your work done. And that's what it is like our practices have changed now to like more of like we're prepping. So like we're going to the cage an hour before we even get out onto the field, and it's like, hey, today. Now, like most of our days would be more along the lines of like, okay, hitters go through your routine. I'm going to throw, and if I'm throwing in here today, you're getting machine on the field. And if we did machine in the cage for after your routine, like you're going to get arm on the field. And but like there's always that aspect of like, hey, today there's always a challenging aspect each day to what we're trying to do with hitters.
Sure.
And a lot of it is too is just like, can we speed your eyes up? It feels good and looks good when somebody's throwing that BP heater and we're hitting homers in BP, and then the game comes and it's like you're not on time with anything, you're not picking up the ball. So it's like, hey, like these foam balls are going to shoot out of here. They're going to create a little bit of carry. We can create a little bit of sync with them. However, whatever pitch we're working on that day, and we're going to train your eyes to catch back up to like 100,
Yeah.
because I think in my 2 years of pro ball, I think I saw like one guy throw 100, and I think this year as a hitting coach, I think we saw 6, 7 guys touch 100, but everybody's pitching from like 94 to 98,
Yeah.
you know,
It's
and
absurd.
the ball's moving. Everybody's doing different things with the ball. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, Aaron, I appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Yeah.
And for the listeners in, how can they get in touch with you? And also, I think you have a hitting camp coming up pretty soon if you want to plug that as
Yep.
well.
Yeah. So I have it pulled up right here because I'm not as official, but it's my website is r3baseball.godaddysites.com. I have 3 children that are all start their first names all start with R, so it's a little tribute to them.
Love that.
Um, so I have R3 Baseball is my website. I think it's r3baseballclt@gmail.com is another way to reach out to me. And then my Twitter handle is at hitting his life 15. Is my Twitter handle, like, anyways. And again, I have the camp. You can register online with the camp. You can do that. Or if you just want, hit me up on Twitter. You got any type of questions, want to talk hitting, like I'm always down for that. So
Love it.
yeah.
Sweet. Well, I appreciate it. And for those of you
Yeah.
listening, share this if you got anything out of it. A lot of really good nuggets in here. And stay in the zone.